say we give, yep. Um, awesome. All right, welcome everybody. We're looking forward to the webinar today and appreciate everyone joining. We're going to give a few minutes for folks to get into the Zoom here. So we'll start in just a couple minutes. Um, so, okay, so Pavol, my screen share looks good, like it should now at this point, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Perfect.
looks good.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me make sure. So I can see you, I can see me. Great. All right. And I'll just make sure. Can I go back and forth like this? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started here? And then we're going to share out a recording after this as well. So if you have a colleague who is maybe joining a little bit late or something, you'll have the full access to um, the full video of the webinar afterwards. So welcome everybody. We Today we're going to talk about the state of digital ID in Europe and specifically around the European digital identity wallets as we approach the deadline of December 2026, where member states are required to make a wallet available to their citizens. This is a topic that Trinsic gets asked a lot of questions about, and we've kind of compiled a lot of like our research and understanding from talking to people across the ecosystem, participating in the ecosystem. And then we've also brought Pavol here, who's an expert, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. So we're going to be co-presenting, going back and forth um, throughout the next, 45 minutes or so. So um, just by way of introduction, I'm Zach Jones. I lead the product partnerships at Trinsic, and I work with all of the wallets and identity providers that Trinsic integrates with through our kind of EID hub or digital ID gateway. And yeah, Pavol, if you want to give a quick intro to you.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Pavol, as you said, Pavol Hrina, primarily working as an EUDI Wallet strategy consultant, focusing on product, making it happen, making the user experience as smooth as possible. Besides of that, I also joined the National Security Authority in Slovakia to to work and to support the national EUDI wallet schema creation. And as well, I co-founded the DI Forum, the Digital Identity Forum, a space where builders can speak and share information about what's new, what's coming, what are the bottlenecks, and so on.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Pablo. Just one housekeeping item before we kind of jump into the content here. We do plan to have time at the end for questions and answers. So within Zoom, you'll see the Q&A function there. And if you do have a question that comes up throughout the session, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. And then once we get through the prepared content, we'll jump into some of those questions at the end. So yeah, without further ado, we'll kind of start general, and I'll hand it over to you, Pavel, just to talk
Yeah.
through the introduction here.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start with the timeline, right? Like how it looks, how we came from, uh, and where we at, right? We'll have two slides, and the second slide will elaborate on that. So 2024 and 2025 was when everything was defined. 2025, the implementing acts were finalized. So now we are in the stage of building the national, or countries are in the stage of building national schemas, and basically like turning on all the processes, right? There are some mandates that every member state has to fulfill, and until 2026, December 24th is the deadline where every country has to release a wallet for their citizens and or residents. And then if we go one step further in 2027, we should get the wide acceptance, so which is like 36 months after implementing X. Can you go a slide further? Cool. So yeah, the actual how we come there, right? Like how we can come to the acceptance in 2027. So member states have not implemented the actual processes yet of registrar for becoming a wallet relying party. If we talk about acceptance, so accepting the credentials, accepting the digital identities, right? As a relying party, as a service provider. Nor have they started certifying officially the EUDI wallets, because the wallets, the schemas are just being created, right? So there is no officially certified EUDI wallet app, whatever. Like, so there are a lot of articles you might find where companies are disclosing that they are certified as an EUDI wallet, but it's not true, right? Because this is still ongoing. Yeah, this is a process that will take us until end of 2026. Which is where the legal application date is 24th of December. As I said, the countries must designate a registrar, uh, which then will allow relying parties to get registered. Um, what I also wanted to mention here is that um, in progress processes are made, but then if we go a step further into 2027, 24th of 2027, uh, it will be mandatory for regulated entities, for private sector. So not everyone, not all the companies, but some companies that require strong online authentication, like banks, financial institution, or as well very large online platforms, which is LinkedIn, above a certain number of users. They will also have to allow, so like LinkedIn, Facebook, social networks are pretty big. They will have to allow also access through the EUDI wallets. Um, yeah. And so, long story short, here, when the companies will be able to consume the credentials, let's say theoretically after the 24th of December, so Christmas present for companies. Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one. Um, a slide which probably, yeah, you can just go back a step, sorry. Back. Yeah. A slide which might look at first as a mess or messy, but we'll try to give you a glimpse for the ones that are maybe not so much into the topic. Like, what are the different parts, right? Like, so we will structure them into layers. Could you click, Zach? So the first and foremost, we have the governance layer, where we can say the main is the ADAS, which is a amendment of the original ADAS regulation, which establishes the European Digital Identity Framework, right? So this is the law, the regulation, which is the cornerstone, the stone that everything has to follow. Then we have also mentioned there the ARF, so the Architecture and Reference Framework, which is the technical interpretation of the law. We have the once and only technical system, the infrastructure for sharing data between public administrations. We have the implementing acts, IAS, which goes from which are then specifically defining what the regulation says. So defining the steps that providers, that relying parties, that member states have to fulfill, in order to the ecosystem to work and to in order to be according to the legislation. And also, like last but not least, there is the Payment Service Directive, which speaks about payments. If you click when we have the communication layer, so we could say like the pipes where the through which the information flows, we have the ISO 18013, which is the standards for mobile driver's licenses um, for proximity flows. We have the OpenID stack for verifiable credentials for issuance and presentation. So issuing credentials, verifiable credentials, and presenting credentials. We have the DID for some. It might be familiar, the decentralized identifier, but this is optional for countries. Can you click? Okay. Then we have the security layer, which is one of these is WSCD, which is the wallet secure cryptographic device. So it's like the vault where the keys are stored. Local, it can be for different one. It could be either local, internal, remote, remote native, or local external, depending on the different ways of how to store keys. Not all of them, I want to make sure, like not all of them are certifiable as of now, right? Like for example, like secure element is one thing that might not be there at first because the yeah we are not all the phones are already supporting that. And then if we go to the WSCA, which is the Wallet Secure Cryptographic Application, is the security guard or the program, the software that operates the secure vault. Click, please. And last, but one before last, but the last layer is the content layer, where we have different credentials, or what we call credentials, but in this language we call them electronic attestations of attributes, and then they can be qualified, non-qualified, or public, which is just depending on what source they are from what source they are issued. You can imagine like diplomas, professional licenses, what probably you might know about. You can also interchange it with like credentials, verifiable credentials in this sense. We have the PID, which is the foundational identity, right, which activates the wallet, and also signatures, which allows you to e-sign documents, contracts. Click. And yeah, this enables some use cases. Could be KYC for a bank scenario, opening a bank account. Could be some payment, which is still also something that to discuss. Could be age verification. Okay, click. So
Awesome.
yeah, the was a little bit like a lot, but pretty much four layers, which turn into an app and a system and an ecosystem that works in and can store and can do the transactions.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Pablo, for the introduction there. So I think if anything, this illustrates that there's a lot of complexity here, and not all of these different pieces are going to be relevant to like every party within this ecosystem, right? So at this point, you may be wondering, okay, what is Trinsic's role in all of this? How does Trinsic participate? How do we help companies in this space? So Trinsic has built this acceptance layer for digital IDs and digital credentials online. So our role here specifically is to help businesses verify the identity of a user who has an EUDI wallet, right? So that means that certain parts that Pavlo just showed are kind of out of scope for the rest of like this conversation. But they're worth understanding that they exist, and there's nuance in kind of how credentials get issued and how the wallets get certified and all these things. But for the purpose of this, we're going to focus on, okay, how do we facilitate, verification of identity with a user who has an EUDI wallet, right? So Trinsic right now supports, current EIDs in Europe. We support mobile driving licenses in the US and elsewhere. We support bank IDs and other forms of government ID wallets. And the European digital identity wallets are just going to be another like identity provider in our network that businesses who work with Trinsic can accept by default by like in working with us, right? And there will be some additional steps and nuance here that we'll talk about in the coming slides. But again, our role is focused on the acceptance side. We're not talking about issuance or creating our own wallet, but that may be something that, your company or your customers are interested in doing. Um, so for the purposes of this conversation, there's this key term that Pavol mentioned called the wallet relying party. Now, this just means this is a business that wants to rely on the information that comes from the EUDI wallet. And in general, again, there's more specifics that we can get into, but in general, under this new EUDI framework, what happens is a business registers as a wallet relying party within the member state where they are incorporated or registered. And this gives them permission to then request attributes from any EUDI wallet across all the EU member states, right? So um, the registration process itself is going to require just some information about the business entity, what type of data that you're requesting, or like which data attributes you want, what purpose you have for requesting those data elements, right? So you need to make sure you're not over asking for information or data from a user. And then the result of this registration process will um, end in some like issuance of an access certificate and registration certificate for these specific data scopes, allowing the wallet relying party to create a request and ask for attributes from a user's wallet. Um, there is in the implementing acts and kind of what's been published, there is the opportunity for intermediaries to do a lot of this work on behalf of the relying party. So Trinsic could play the role of the wallet relying party intermediary and really manage a lot of the complexity on behalf of the end business here, so they don't have to deeply understand what's going on behind the scenes and kind of in the weeds throughout in the ecosystem. So. Um, One thing to note about the registration process, because a lot of existing digital IDs have some form of registration, and these processes vary from being like very simple to being very cumbersome. And certain digital IDs, in order to be able to, for a business to accept them, they may need to have their like an application reviewed by a government agency. That could take weeks. You get feedback, you have to amend the application. And right now, we help facilitate that with existing wallet providers. And one of the questions we've gotten is kind of like, how difficult will it be to register to accept credentials from an EUDI wallet? And the registration processes aren't final, but the guidance from the EU Commission is kind of written here. So the goal of the registrar is to be easy to use and ideally, where possible, automated for wallet relying parties, because everybody wants to have widespread acceptance of the credentials in the EUDI wallet, which means you can't make it overly burdensome for relying parties to go through the registration process. So again, we'll see exactly what these processes look like in each of the member states, but the overall guidance is this should be a fairly lightweight registration process, and it's more so built to have like a public record or log of which companies are requesting certain data. So then there's also some sort of recourse if businesses are over asking for data and users need to go back to report something like that. Um, on the side of like technical acceptance, like Pavel talked about, within the EUDI wallet, there are going to be these different like credential types. Um, the primary one that we're focused on at the moment is the PID, personal identification data. There are a lot of requirements around like how PID needs to be issued into the wallet to ensure that essentially the user has been proofed to a very high degree, so that that identity information is very like highly trustworthy. And then there are requirements around like authentication to make sure that the user who is presenting the PID is the same user and again is like authenticated to a very high degree. Um, the wallets will also have other types of capabilities that, again, are out of scope for this discussion, but things like qualified electronic signature, Wallets will also kind of log a record of transactions so that users can see kind of who's been asking for their data, and they have some sort of recourse if, they want to go back and ask for data deletion. Again, but for the purpose of this, we're looking at the wallet is holding the PID, and that could be provided by any member state's, provider. But in this kind of demo scenario, we have like a Belgian PID provider issues this into the wallet, the EUDI wallet for a user. And then you have, a Dutch intermediary who's registered as a wallet relying party intermediary. This would be Trinsic in this case. And then a wallet relying party at the end of the stream, an end business in France, right? So there's a lot of different steps and complexity here, but in order to create this verification, there needs to be like a compliant request that is sent to the wallet following the right like technical protocols and specifications, in order to basically create that share request, right? So first, the wallet relying party needs to be registered for the data scope that they're requesting. Then there's a technical layer where you need to be able to create the verification request. The user is then going to, scan a QR code or click a deep link, which sends them into their wallet application. They perform the authentication, see who's requesting their data, and then they can give consent to share it. And then behind the scenes, on a technical level, there'll be all sorts of kind of like certificate and signature validation going on. And then as this data comes back, it's being normalized and returned to the wallet relying party through the intermediary, Trinsic in this scenario, to make sure that at the end of the day, the verification that's being performed achieves the business purpose that the relying party needs in order to complete the transaction. Um, so there's a bunch more kind of things going on underneath the hood or behind the scenes here, but that is kind of just a general overview of like what this looks like from a technical acceptance point of view. Again, most of this complexity will just be abstracted away through, what Trinsic has done and built here. But this is kind of what's happening. Um, so in theory, like registering and supporting the protocols to request credentials from the wallet or attributes from the wallet will give you the ability to accept credentials from every member state, right? So what could go wrong? Like it's just a perfect scenario. Everyone's registered, everyone's following the standard, and we can all live happily ever after, right? So, um, unfortunately, there's always nuance that happens in these things. So, while the kind of theoretical is still there and it's like a very great ideal to aspire to, one, it's going to take time to kind of achieve, this like alignment and harmonization. Different member states and countries are going to have differing timelines for like when they're launching, how their wallets are getting adopted. And then even within all of this, you still have a lot of like very important and significant countries that are not participating in the standard EUDI model, right? So if you want to accept credentials from the United Kingdom, that's a completely separate like registration under their trust framework. And Switzerland may have their own, right? And Ukraine may have different processes. So all of the non-EU countries like are still, maybe launching wallets that are conceptually aligned, but are going to have completely different registration processes and maybe a completely different like standard stack as well that you have to support. Um, and I think one of the major points here is that like the EUDI wallet growth like could be slow, right? So wallets are going to be launching soon, like in theory at the end of the year. But onboarding new users takes time, especially when there's going to be, certain requirements around like how the user must be onboarded into the wallet. And then, there may be new behaviors that need to be established, which is going to take time. So if we look at an existing digital ID ecosystem, like in Italy, you have kind of this precursor to the EUDI wallet called the IT wallet that has launched like within an existing application. It already has, some millions of users and some digital documents that have been issued there. Now it's not certified as an EUDI wallet yet. It doesn't support all the standards and protocols needed. And they have a pretty good user base, But compared to SPID, which is like the existing digital identity infrastructure, the user base is just a fraction, right? Like it's almost an order of magnitude smaller. So you have SPID, which has over 40 million users and is used 1.3 billion times per year. So users are very used to authenticating with SPID. They've been strongly proofed and onboarded into the system, and they're used to using it to access government and private sector services. So, from a business perspective, you'll ideally want to support both of those things. But putting all your eggs towards supporting just the EUDI wallet, there's going to be still going to be a large percentage of the user base that doesn't have it yet, right? And this adoption rate is going to vary country to country. Certain countries may, grow very significantly and have almost like near ubiquitous usage after a couple years, and others are going to have a slower uptake because there are competing ID systems that are already well adopted, that will continue to exist in parallel, right? So, um, yeah, at this point, I'll hand it back over to Pavol to talk a little bit more about kind of the current landscape here and current state of UDI wallets.
Okay, thank you. Let me just see, switch. Yeah, yeah. Nice. So this research actually, or this output of a research was released in November 2025. So there might be already some changes, some small changes that have happened. But what we want to show you with that is that the momentum is real, but you can imagine that the maturity is uneven. So some countries might be ahead, some countries might have existing digital identity schemas that have millions, hundreds of thousands, or tens millions of users. Some might have less users, right? So every country is in a different stage, but every country has the same goal or same deadlines, which is December 24, right? So how to read this one? Even though some of the countries are in yeah, not in English, but it might be understandable. So green indicates that something is operating. The yellow shows that is in development or testing, and the red is either early stage or with limited public details. Yeah, so as we can see, and just want to also make sure we understand from this webinar is that even though the green ones are active, they are not EUDI wallet compliant, right? So the schemas are being built. They are not mandated to operate with that certifications, but it is happening, right? So countries are progressing, different challenges, uh, different challenges in the mature one, different challenges in the unmature one, and as well, yeah. So different stages, and we'll see how this unpacked and evolves until end of this year. Could we move? Uh, Nice. So the three ones that we also wanted to show you as which have and or are undergoing a different approach, uh, because everybody has chosen their own approach, right? So we have three different ones which we thought were interesting for the audience. First is France. So France is taking an expansion approach. So they are currently building capabilities on top, will build or are building, right? Like on top of their existing France Identité app, that already has like 3.2 millions of EIDs created, and they are evolving what already works, right? So that's how France has chosen their path. Then we have Poland. Poland has chosen a different path with it, which is pursuing or developing in parallel, right? So they have their original M-Obyvatel 0.0, which has from recent, like from yesterday, I think there was an announcement that has around like 11 millions of users. already, which with 1 million of daily users or daily logins. But they have chosen to do in parallel the MOBivatel 3.0, which will be a fully EADAS 2 or EUDI wallet compliant app. But they will, until then, they will keep the MOBivatel 2 running. And then we have Denmark, which has another approach, an iterative one. So most of the countries are focusing on one deadline, which is the December one, as I told you, like December 2026 this year. But Denmark will do an iterative approach. And in spring this year, they want to launch Alt ID as a first version of the wallet, which will allow users to use features as age verification, and also store some of the documents such as ID cards. And then they want to gradually expand it, right? So they will learn. It won't be. I would assume it won't be certified as an EUDI wallet in spring. Maybe they will do it later, but there will be something out there which they can already use, which people can already try, which can then be evolved and iterated and yeah, and scaled. So so yeah, we see three approaches. Not one is better. We'll see the end product, right? Like the end result. We'll see which of maybe we can have a follow up in 1 year. In January 2027, and see those three and how they evolved, and who got the most users in their new apps or in their evolved apps. Yeah. Okay. Um, Public and private wallets. There was and is still a lot of discussions on, like, is public wallet the way to go? Maybe one. Like I also had some discussions with people that were expecting to have like one EUDI wallet that would be maintained and delivered by the EU. So every citizen of every or resident of every country would have that one wallet, which didn't happen. So what is public-private? The mandate is to have at least one, right? So every state has to release at least a one wallet 24th of December 2026, which doesn't says that there can't be more, right? But then we got some news actually this week. For example, if we take Germany, the Federal Ministry for Digital and Transport has announced that the alternative wallet, which are the private providers, will be allowed at the later stage to certify, and officially be recognized as EUDI wallet. Later stage means 12 months after the original or the state one is delivered, right? We'll see. Yeah, my guess is that this might also be an approach of other countries, but just Germany has announced it, right? I will come to that back when I go to and show you a little bit about about the schema creation. Um, as well, are we saying like 1, 10, 8? We'll have at minimum um, 27 wallets by each member state, but there can be more. And we hope for more, right? Like the wallet space and the ecosystem, there needs to be more, right? Like not like one app might not be sufficient for all the use cases out there. So I hope that multiple countries and that this won't be blocked. But there are rumors, which I also wanted to mention. There are rumors that some countries, they have, not publicly, but at some conferences, disclosed that they won't be certifying private sector wallets. What does it mean? Maybe some are asking. You can get certified in another state, but the PID has to be only acquired into that one wallet which is certified in that country as of now. Okay, we can move on. So public-private, there will be, we will start with 27, but we gradually we might get to a way bigger number. Um, cool. This so how everything happens, right? Like, so what steps have to be undergone to actually uh, have the wallets ready by 24th of December 2026. Uh, so the scheme owner now, probably most countries are on the stage of the scheme owners and the scheme creation, which is we could say that it's like a rule book, requirements, scope, so evidence, how everything, like how the wallets have to be certified, right? The checklist, which will say like, okay, this is a true EUDI wallet that can be that has all, like is according to all the legislation, all the regulation, the standards. Um, so the first step is to create a scheme. This is where we most countries are at right now, creating the scheme, the national scheme, right? We are talking about the national scheme. Then the second step is that the national accreditation bodies, they accredit certification bodies that will run the scheme. On the third step, I will just go quickly through it on the diagram. On the third step, we would say that the wallet issuers and the EID scheme operator, they developed, right, like the wallet provider developed a wallet, a backend, everything that is required in order to fulfill the requirements for an EUDI wallet. Then they apply for a certification, right? It takes sometimes to get verified, certified, meet all the requirements back and forth. So this can take some time. The certification body then assesses the evaluates requirements using a specialist for testing and audit if it's needed. Yeah, in that phase. Then at the next step, the certification body issues the certificate once all findings are resolved. So once the wallet provider meets all the requirements, the certification body issues the certificates to the provider. And then at last, which is something that hopefully will come in December or before that, right? It has to come before that. The solution can be run in production, and it's also supervised. So yeah, we need to make sure that the wallet runs on the same requirements as it was when it applied for the certificate for the certification. Yeah, this process is complex. Creating a schema might take months. Create so the getting accreditation as a certification body takes time. Producing a wallet that fulfills what the national schema defines takes time, and there is not so much time left in the year. So it is, from what I see, like working on it, it's the deadlines are pretty harsh, pretty strict, but countries and the vendors are doing what they're capable to fulfill the deadlines. But we have also heard, right, like um, the Netherlands has, like last year, I think it was October or November, they have disclosed that they most probably won't meet the deadlines, right? So some countries are already publicly saying that the deadlines, yeah, might not be fulfilled by them. Cool. You can go.
Yeah, thank you, Pavol. Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is again a complicated process because all kind of parts of the ecosystem need to be compliant and certified, which means you first, like you said, need to build the scheme by which you certify, then the process, the conformance testing, et cetera, to make sure it the wallet actually can form. So there's a lot of different interdependencies here. And obviously, if the wallet doesn't know exactly what they're being certified against, it's hard to, prepare
Yeah.
exactly to pass the test. So those are some of the things that are ongoing right now, like within all of the member states. Is the schemas are being developed, the certification processes are being developed, and then hopefully later this year we'll start to see those, official certified EUDI wallets and issuers and things like that. So, um, like at this point, there's still a lot of big unknowns, especially for businesses that are, interested in accepting the EUDI wallet kind of like proactively. Like Pavol said, there is the 2027 December, like regulated institutions will be required to accept the EUDI wallet, which is going to drive a lot of acceptance and adoption. From what we hear from relying parties, they want to be accepting the EUDI wallets as soon as possible. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to wait until the end of 2027. If there are users that have a highly trusted credential in a wallet that they can authenticate to in a strong way, and it's a good user experience to complete an onboarding flow, a lot of businesses are very interested in supporting that right here and now. Um, but again, there's still a lot of unknowns to get through. So, like we talked about, given the questions around public sector wallets, private sector wallets, different member states having different distinctions, like there may be a lot of wallets. We don't know how many wallets there will be exactly. And we also don't know how quickly users are going to adopt these EUDI wallets, right? So you'll probably see talk in different places about the onboarding requirements. And the stricter the onboarding requirement is, the harder it is for a user to onboard into a wallet and obtain, their credential that they can start using for things. So there's going to be a balance where the user needs to be highly proofed, but if you make the onboarding super difficult, not as many people may go through the process because the citizens are required to have a wallet available to them. That doesn't mean they're required to use it, right? So that's maybe like a misconception that is talked about sometimes that the citizens are not required to use the wallet. They're just required that it's available to them, right? So some other uncertainties that we've talked about a little bit is like what will be the exact processes for actually registering, to be a relying party and accept credentials from the wallet. There's certainly some uncertainty around like cross-border use cases, just given the complexity of how there will be, 27 different like issuers, wallets, and wallet relying parties, and like all the permutations of that. Will everything work perfectly and seamlessly, like out of the box? Maybe not. Um, and then like Pavel mentioned, can all the member states meet the deadline for launching wallets? Some have said that it's, maybe unlikely or going to be a challenge. And then there's a lot of questions around business models for the different players in the ecosystem. So, what's the business model for issuing credentials, verifying credentials, sustaining a private sector wallet, for example, right? So, if you have a government provided wallet, that's provided by the government agency, but what if a private sector business wants to create a wallet and get it certified? What then is the business model? And how do you kind of, monetize that? So, there are a lot of unknowns. There's many more that aren't listed here, but these are some of the key ones that we wanted to highlight that I think will impact like the decision making for businesses who are considering, adding support, becoming a relying party for the EU GI wallets, right? So, um, awesome. And then, yeah, so just kind of to close things out before we get into Q&A here, um, we're on the road to, mandatory acceptance in 2027 for regulated institutions, but we are in this messy middle right now where the implementing acts from the EU Commission are now being kind of created as processes in each member state. And like we talked about, that is it's a difficult process, time consuming, and given the complexity of the ecosystem, both from like a technical perspective and a governance perspective, there are just a lot of moving parts here. So there aren't a ton of clear answers quite yet. There's a lot of great kind of like research and posting. Like LinkedIn is a great place to follow news related to what's happening in the EUDI ecosystem. But right now, there's a lot in progress, and that's kind of where we'll be following very, very, very closely in 2026 to see what each of the member states are doing and how these different processes launch. And we'll be kind of an asset to supporting businesses as they want to accept the credentials. I think one thing that we didn't end up including in the slides, but had at one point was that we do have kind of a demo going with some of the sandbox environments. Some of the wallets and member states have made available like a sandbox to test a verification using the wallet. So the France Identité has a sandbox. We have kind of a demo verification where a user can present a credential using the standards set out in the implementing acts, and kind of at least see what the user experience looks like for an EUDI wallet verification. I'm happy to share that kind of offline or after this session. Um, but with that, we want to move into the question and answer section. So thanks everybody for attending and listening through the presentation. And yeah, we have about 10 or 15 minutes here to get through some of the questions. And let's kind of see, yeah, where we want to start out here. Pavel, if you see any that you're interested in answering,
So
uh,
there are multiple about AI agents.
yeah.
I mean, we can just summarize it. Good questions, great questions. I don't know much about the EUDI wallet like person, so the EUDI wallet, but there is also mention about the EBW, which is the EU business wallet. And I was recently, like maybe 2 weeks ago, looking at the regulation and doing some review of that. And there is specifically written about. I just wanted to find it. Uh, it doesn't define like actually like okay, so agents, AI, but it defines that it has to be kind of open to incorporate also new means of technology, and specifically it's written the integration of additional features and new technologies that would enable new use cases such as agentic AI. So yeah, this is the draft of the regulation of the EBW. Yeah, and overall, like I would probably like to see to have an AI agent like doing some of my operations, but um, mm, just a segue on the DI forum. If somebody is interested, we are having like a series about identity in AI agents. So I would really like to have this opportunity, these features, but I think we're still early to trust with such credentials, right? Like we're only moving. We are not even paying with not even paying. Paying is already like a major feature, but you know what I mean. We are still not there yet, and still evolving.
Um, yeah, since it came up here, the European
Yeah.
business wallet idea, Pavel, that's something we didn't quite touch on in the presentation, but do you want to give just a short overview of kind of like what that is and kind of like the key value proposition for like a European business wallet? Like why is that interesting or valuable to people?
Sure. Maybe if I no, just wanted to see one thing if I can share just
Mhm.
quickly, but we probably don't have to. Uh, yeah. Mm, I just-
You should have permission to share, but if
Okay,
if you
but
can't,
maybe I could. So
yep.
some people, some attendees might know. So the European Business Wallet should be a digital solution for public for companies, right? For um, and for public sector, not only for companies, so private sector and public sector. Um, can be also for self-employed to right like public sector bodies, sole traders. The goal of it is to harmonize trusted and user-friendly framework of digital framework of B2G and B2B interactions. It should be at first it should be mandatory for B2G for the so B2G transactions, they have to they have to accept it, and what can be inside uh, could be business regist like B what was it KYB, know your business, uh could include business registration. It also contains like role management when it comes to business, like to operators of a company, right? Like that uh, defines who the owner is, who maybe is somebody that has the rights to act on behalf of the company, and so on and so forth, right? So it should help the businesses to thrive, to reduce costs, to make transaction more efficient, and yeah. So
Awesome.
short summary.
Yeah, perfect. Um, a few more questions here. So, do you have a sandbox or test environment already available for testing? So, like we mentioned, some of the member states have made like a sandbox environment available, and we are in the process of like ex basically exposing a version of that through the Trinsic platform. So you'll
Yeah.
have the availability to kind of in like a test mode or a demo environment, showcase a full like end-to-end verification with like a testing or demo credential, given that that's kind of where, you know, the state of the ecosystem is kind of in that sandbox or testing mode. But you'd be able to support kind of an EUDI sandbox wallet really just by adding like a new provider with Intrinsic. So yeah, that's in progress right now. It's kind of working in our development environment and then being productized and added to the platform shortly. Um, Another good question here, and I'll weigh in, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, Pavel. What do you think will happen to existing EU digital IDs once EUDI wallets come about? Um, I don't think that they're necessarily going to go away, certainly. So I think that existing digital IDs that have like widespread adoption and like really ingrained user patterns are going to be hard to displace, especially on a short time horizon. So we're certainly betting on a world in which there are users using the EUDI wallet, users using existing digital IDs, and those two things kind of going on in parallel, and then potentially like transitioning more over to EU digital ID wallets in the coming years, right? So I don't think that we're going to turn the switch on in December 24th of 2026 and all of a sudden everybody will have an EUDI wallet. Um, Existing digital IDs may be used like as onboarding into the EUDI wallet too. So part of these things kind of go, you know, similar, like go hand in hand a bit as well. But yeah, Pavel, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add about existing digital IDs or what do you think about that?
Yeah, probably the question was more like I read it like EUDID, but the EU EIDs, right? Like probably electronic uh digital identities. So yeah, I would say how I understand it, they will have to adapt in certain steps. So if they are a notified ADA scheme, if they are built upon that, like the regulation is being amended. So new law is um, new law amends and mandates what you have to do as a trust service provider, or as an EID provider, or as a wallet. If you are certified by that. So um, probably not December. There has to be some time, but it will happen at some point in the future. So yeah, there will be transition, but also the ones that are mature, they have the users. For them to switch might not be that hard, because as Zach also mentioned, if some countries have wallets that are EID notified but with low level of assurance high, they can reuse their existing, you know, EID to onboard onto the EUDI wallet with in a matter of seconds. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Um, Awesome. So yeah, thanks for the questions. We have time for a few more. So if people have anything else, feel free to drop them into the Q&A section here. Um, just one question. We touched briefly on this, Pavol, related to like SSI, and I think
Yeah,
there was a self-sovereign identity or decentralized identifiers. We don't need to get like too deep into the specific technical
yeah,
nature here, but I think there was a period of time where it seemed like the EUDI like infrastructure and kind of technical mandate would be like very far into like self-sovereign identity, and I think it's kind of maybe tweaked a little bit to be like a little bit more, not quite all the way SSI version, but I don't know, Pavel, as somebody who's been in the decentralized ID space and following this for a while, like how have you seen
yeah.
kind of the conversations evolve and like what's actually made it into the implementing acts versus, what people maybe thought would happen a few years ago or
So,
something?
yes, so it won't be, yeah, pure SSI won't be what the EUDI wallet will be. Um, which requires yeah, decentralized ledger, DITCOM, and DIDs. As I mentioned, the DID, the decentralized identifiers are optional. Here in the EUDI wallet, we rely on PKI based trust model, so public key infrastructure, and relying on something called like the X509 certificates, and the trusted lists that are provided by the member states, right? So that's how the trust is being built through those means that are kind of evolved from the ADAS. We can call it 1.0. So yes, so we will have to use the OpenID as I also mentioned. So it's OAuth2, OpenID standards, and yeah. So it won't be pure SSI, but it's the best that could evolve from what was here and is here.
Awesome. All right, last question. I think this is a great one to end on. Do you think the EUDI wallet will have significant volume by 2030? Um, I think it's going to vary a lot by member state, but I think without a doubt, we're going to start seeing significant volume with EUDI wallets in certain member states, even sooner than 2030. So some of them are going to take
Mhm.
more time for onboarding and things like that, but I think there's a pretty compelling model here that, there are already kind of precursor wallets that are getting strong adoption, like we talked about in Italy and Poland and France. So certain countries have a little bit of a running start here, where users already know about the app and the functionality. The government and public sector is already starting to think about accepting these credentials. So as a citizen, if you have a wallet that gives you access to do things like pay your taxes and access healthcare records and do other useful tasks in your life, you're going to be compelled to download and use that wallet just because it makes your life easier and better. So I think that, we're going to see a lot of variation in range, but I could see certain countries getting really strong adoption and uptake as soon as in the next like 12 to 24 months, is my belief. But yeah, Pavel, would love to get your quick thoughts here and then we'll wrap up. Yeah.
Cool. So the official statement was 80% adoption until 2030, sorry. The target, right? So 80% of the EU citizens. I don't think we will get there. Maybe like, yeah, 40, 50 could be an achievable goal. What are things that will improve that? As we talked about the mandate, like, so there will be company or organizations, entities that are mandated, which will boost the adoption, right? Like, which they will provide for users to use the EUDI wallet. Then the age verifications around the EU is also kind of in discussions, and how to limit so how to set the age limit on social networks, which also might enhance some of the adoptions. And I hope that what will actually boost the adoption are like things that are voluntarily but are better than what we currently have. So as Zach mentioned, right, like having documents, having e-sig. Some countries already have that, right? Like we could speak about some which isn't something new for them, but so yeah. hoping for the companies to actually see the benefit and start implementing and start pushing out use cases that will make our lives easier, not only in countries, which is also like one thing to highlight, but also member state, right? Like cross country use cases, which currently is something that works across some countries, but not all.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, we are right at the top of the hour, so I want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you, Pavol, for joining and kind of sharing your experience and thoughts here. We will be following up with the recording to the from the webinar and then some other materials as well. And if you have additional questions in the meantime, you can find either of us on LinkedIn. You can reach out to Trinsic on our website. And yeah, we look forward to talking with you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.